There is something special inside you.
Welcome to GNG Podcast with your host, speaker, best-selling author, Chaz Jackson.
Yo, what's going on, kings and queens? It's your boy Chaz Jackson coming back to you once again, representing GNG Gifting and Gift. Hey, I just personally want to take the time to tell each and every one of you, thank you for giving me your eyes, your ears once again. It's great to dive deep into some inspiration that I pray will plant like a seed in your mind and assist you in becoming a greater version of yourselves. I'm so excited about this episode 20 tonight. We have a powerhouse of a speaker and my lady Mary B's in the house. And if you've been watching this live stream, this podcast, you know that our motto is we're all gifted differently to make a difference. And I want each and every one of you difference makers to let us know that you're there, whether you're a teacher, parent, youth advocate, student, pastor, whatever realm that you're coming to us at. Again, thank you. Let us know that you're here. Share this out. This message that we're ready to dive on to, the theme of being brilliantly resilient. I'm so excited about this theme and allow Mary to share on that. And also, before I even read off the short bio on her, I want you guys to take the daily challenge with me on living out the mission of this platform, of becoming a passionate visionary who is determined to leave a legacy for themselves by adopting unwavering life values and serving others in the area of gifting led by God. So that is the daily challenge that I'm taking. I'm very passionate about that. I want you to take it with me. Again, as we get ready to dive deep into this episode, I am going to go ahead and read off Queen Mary's short bio. We're going to get her on the camera with you guys. So Mary Fran Bontempo is an award-winning two-time TEDx speaker, author, humorist, and media host who teaches audience to uncover their brilliance and resilience 15 minutes at a time. A sought-after presenter for corporate and association events, Mary Fran is the author of the 15-minute master and co-founder of Brilliantly Resilient. And she is on GNG Livestream Podcast. Miss Mary F. Bontempo, you are live on GNG Livestream Podcast. Are you ready to get it, Miss Champion?
Hey, Chaz, I am so excited to be here. I have been looking forward to this all day. You and I met a couple of months ago. I'm using the air quotes here because it was all virtual, like every meeting is anymore. But I felt an instant connection with your message and your desire to empower young people. My story is an interesting one, as we'll get into that. But I'm just beyond thrilled to be able to be with you tonight.
I'm so excited to have you on the show. And am I butchering your last name? You know, even off the camera. Bontempo, right? Am I saying that right?
Bontempo.
Bontempo. I apologize.
Yeah.
Bontempo.
No, please.
I apologize about that. But I know I read off that short bio. Is there anything else you would like the audience to know about yourself that I didn't necessarily mention?
You know, I think the thing that's kind of important, I do have a lot of humor in my work and in my writing. It does say that I'm a humorist in there, but all of that came out of a really dark time in my life. And the thing that I think that's one of the kind of the lessons, and I've taken to looking at my life as just little mini lessons all the way through, anymore. But one of the lessons was that no matter how dark things go, you have to constantly be seeking a light. And I think that's where the humor piece came in for me. Even if it was dark humor, I had to find ways to lighten things and climb out of the pits that I found myself in. So, lesson number one, turn towards the light. Always turn towards the light.
I like that. We have to turn towards that light and to continue to discover what's on the other side of that and continue to be salt and light to the world in general. And I know you've done some amazing things. Can you kind of share your story building up to what you're doing now as a speaker and an author and an advocate for many people around the world, and kind of what inspired you to kind of get into what you're doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I just grew up a little kid in Northeast Philly, middle class house. The section of Philadelphia that I grew up in, we were all Catholic. We were Catholics or there were publics, and I was a Catholic kid. So there were a million of us who went to the Catholic schools, went all through Catholic grade school, high school, college, Catholic college, and I always enjoyed writing. Got married, had kids, raised the kids, was a youth minister at my church, sang, in church on Sundays. I was raised, you work hard, you do the right thing, and things work out until they don't. There's that time when they don't. And I think one of the things that's hardest for people to accept in some ways is that it's not a reflection on you personally when stuff doesn't work out. We can't control our circumstances all the time. We can control our response to that, and we can get into that a little bit later. But for me, the genesis of pretty much everything that I do now, like I said, I always like to write, but now there's always a message attached. And that began on Mother's Day of 2010, when we were celebrating Mother's Day at my mom's house. I happened to walk out of the room and I heard a commotion coming from the room, and I ran back in to see my son, who's my oldest, who was about, I'll say he was around 25, 26 at the time, just shaking uncontrollably on the couch. And we called paramedics, and when they came in, they kept saying to him, "What'd you take? What did you take?" And I'm like, what do you mean? What did he take? Like, what? There's something wrong. What did he take? Now, again, I'm not a complete goofball, and it wasn't like I had an angel and then suddenly he's, an addict. But I didn't know it was that bad. And I always say, two of the closest companions of people in crisis are denial and distraction.
Wow.
You see this stuff coming at you, and you can't bear to look at it head on. So you deny it, and then you distract yourself. And I did that for a long time. But anyway, long story short, we got him to the hospital, and he had taken a painkiller he had overdosed on, because he was trying to get the high that he couldn't get because he couldn't get his hands on heroin that day.
Wow.
So that was the day, Mother's Day of 2010, that I learned that my son was a heroin addict. And the doctors also told us that if they couldn't reverse the effects of that medication that he had taken, he would need a liver transplant if he lived. So that was one of those life moments where there's before that and after that. That was one of those things that change everything. And that is the genesis of everything I do today.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with the audience, and how you was there being an advocate for your son, and coming to realization of how, some of the situations that even brought him to, being in that state and discovering that he was a heroin addict, and how did the 15-minute, your book, how did all of that surface out of his addiction that you discovered, and all of the barriers that was created based off of being addicted to heroin, as far as your son goes?
Yeah. So when we started to share that story with people, because obviously thank God he did survive. We got him right into rehab, which he was not happy about. But we started to share the story a little bit, because obviously he wasn't there anymore. He wasn't home. He wasn't with us. He wasn't going to work. He was in rehab. And people would say to us, "Oh, you're just going to have to take it one day at a time." And my husband and I would look at each other and be like, "One day? Like, you clearly have no experience with an addict, because one day in the world of addiction, things can change exponentially over and over and over again. There's no limit to the amount of change." So we were like, we can't take it a day at a time. We couldn't do a half a day. We couldn't even do an hour at a time some days, but we could do 15 minutes. So that whole idea of the 15-minute master started out as a survival mechanism. It was just like, all right, you know what? Let's get through the next 15 minutes. And this is a bit of advice that I would share that works for everybody. When you are in that state of crisis and your hair's on fire and you don't know what to do next, just get through the next 15 minutes. You can do that. And then you get through the next 15 minutes. And before you know it, you might not be on the other side of it, but you've gotten through enough of it to kind of regain a little bit of your footing and maybe figure out some steps that you can take. And that then became the second part of it. Once things started to calm down a little bit, we would take 15 minutes and we would try to come up with one single action step. Like we would ask certain questions of ourselves. The main one being, what can I actually do? Not what do I want, because we all want the problem to go away, but what can I actually do? One thing to affect this, to move it forward. And that was how very incrementally we started to get through that.
Gosh, that is so powerful. And it's kind of like, in between a question and an answer is that free will, is that free choice.
Yep.
And it seems like you guys really just honed in on the moment, because there's so many times like we can look back in the past and have regret and anxiety and depression, or we can look forward in the future and we can, have fear and frustration and uncertainty, and we can tend to get out of sight of what's going on in the moment. And even me, part of my story is struggling with alcohol abuse and creating a lot of, disappointments, a lot of stuff that kind of me dig myself out of a hole as far as decisions that I made. And a lot of times whenever you look forward and seeing how much time has been wasted or what you have to make up in structural time, you can kind of get a little anxiety and frustration and sadness, and you can kind of be disappointed in yourselves. And sometimes it can even drive you back into going into that addiction. But just really hone into that moment. And I like how you said just taking that 15 minutes. What can we do in this 15 minutes to survive and keep pushing forward? So I truly feel like that's really brilliant there.
Yeah. And I think, one of the other things that we learned too, and you talk about the things that happen to us. We can't always control our circumstances. We can't always, control those sucker punches or train wrecks that come along. But what we can do every time, is control our response to it. So one of the things that I kind of realized was that every time something happened, I had a choice. And I came up with this little saying that I use all the time, a question that I ask myself. And the question is this: are you just visiting that place, that challenge, or are you going to live there? Are you going to pack your bags and unpack your bags and sit down and get yourself nice and comfy in that place of misery? Or are you just visiting there? And is it just going to be part of your story? It doesn't have to be your whole story. Crappy stuff happens to everybody. I mean, obviously there are different levels, but lousy stuff happens to everybody. Your decision is, are you just visiting that place, or are you going to live there? And
I love it.
Once you make the decision that you're just visiting, that doesn't mean that you don't honor it. It doesn't mean you don't respect it. It doesn't mean you don't look at it. It doesn't mean you make light of it, but you don't take it as the end of everything about you. You don't.
Man, I hope you guys got your pen and paper and you took that down. I'm over here writing. That's why I keep. I love that question. Like, are you just visiting, or are you going to live there? And so many times we can put park in it, right? It's just kind of like we can become comfortable in our circumstances, and we can play the victim role, and we're all called to be victorious in all of our circumstances. In this stage of my journey, I'm constantly looking at the obstacles that I'm facing to be opportunities for me to learn something, or to be able to grow more towards what God's leading me to. So I really like that. Are you visiting, or are you living there? I really like that question, and that's so true. We have to be on course to not stay present in this frustration, guilt, shame, obstacles that are keeping us from living our true life, keeping us from delivering that gift to the world that we came on this planet to contribute. So,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
so there's so many outlets we can write the line and plug in the blank of how many things this world is throwing at us to keep us from living out our full potential and sharing and being the greatest person that we can be. So
Yeah.
and I know with the theme brilliantly resilient, what does that mean to you? Is there a tip or technique that you can share with a young male who's listening to this right now to be able to strive to outlive that theme that comes to mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we're living in this ridiculously wild pandemic world now, and the word resilience is just this word that we use over and over and over again, to the point where I think people don't even hear it anymore, or they don't even know what it means. But here's the thing that I want every single kid listening to understand. You already have it. You were born with resilience.
Mm,
The thing is, kids, we know as children, when we struggle to learn to walk, we get up, we fall, we get up, we fall, we get up, we fall. We don't get up, fall, and go, I'm never going to learn how to do this. We don't do that, because kids know that failure is part of the learning process.
mm,
It's only when they get older and we as adults put this idea of failure as a bad thing on their heads that they suddenly are afraid to keep trying. Once they fail, that's the end of the road. But
mm.
that built-in resilience is something that we have. We get up over and over as kids, and we don't feel shame. We don't feel uncomfortable. We just know it's part of the process. And I'll give you another example. I was on the beach 2 summers ago with my little 5-year-old granddaughter, and we were making one of those, we call them drip castles, where you take the wet sand and you just kind of drip it on the pile of sand, and it makes this kind of delicate, like, pretty little thing. It's not a big clumpy sand castle. Well, she was getting very impatient, and instead of the whole little drip in the sand on, she took this big shovelful and she dumped it on the thing, and it crushed the whole thing.
Mm.
She had a choice, even at 5 years old, to sit there and cry about it, or to realize that that was part of the process. And you know what she said? No prompting from me. She looked at it and she went, well, that didn't work. And then she tried something
Oh,
else.
wow.
So when we can tap into that awareness that resilience is something we are born with, you already have it, then we can take that idea of failure and turn it into something that we learn, that it's part of the process of learning. So
Mm.
to me, that's the very first thing. And then there are a couple of other parts of it, and I know you talk about this one too. This one is super important. When you're knocked down, that's the time when you figure out what your value system is. And you talk about
Mm.
values. I know you talk about that when you're speaking to young people.
Right.
What's the stuff that is at your very core important to you? Is it, things like courage? Is it honesty? Is it hard work? Is it friendship? Is it loyalty? There are any number of things. There's actually a website called viacharacter.org. VIA, the word character.org. And it's like a little test where you can take it and figure out what your kind of core values are. When
Mm.
you figure out what's important to you, that's where you start to rebuild. You make every decision then based on those things that are important to you. If friendship's important to you, then you act like a friend with every decision that you make. If honesty is important to you, then you be honest with every decision that you make. You start by incorporating those core values into decision after decision after decision. And
Mm.
that will lead you down that path towards those things that are going to be of value to you in your life.
Boom! I'm telling you, man. She's laying the heat, man. You're speaking. You're glowing on here. I'm sure the audience is taking down copious notes. If you're not, go ahead, pause this. Go. It's okay. You can rewind it back. Go and get your pen and paper. She just gave some value there, and I'm paraphrasing, but when you're knocked down, for me, I had to really become comfortable with being uncomfortable in a situation, because you're
Oh,
going to fail,
yeah.
you're going to get knocked down. And me being a former collegiate athlete, I realized that even when I was lifting weights, I wasn't necessarily getting stronger unless I was, lifting even more weight, bringing myself to failure or making myself uncomfortable. That was the only way that I was going to grow or get stronger, because if I kept staying in that same realm of lifting weights, I would just go stagnant with my development. And again, whenever you're stepping out, when you're doing a leap of faith, whenever you're overcoming addiction or wherever the case may be, situations don't get knocked down. You have to make yourself comfortable and be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that character and values. I always say to my kids, I feel like values is the roots for your character. So in order for your
Mhm.
character to flourish, you have to have good values, and that's gold. Those standards and beliefs that you choose to filter your life decisions through. So
Yeah.
that's so true, and I truly believe that is so key for young people and adults in general to hone in those values. And that viacharacter.org, that's an awesome resource as well.
Yeah,
Just to
yeah.
kind of get plugged
Check
in.
that out. I think
Yeah.
it's really. I mean, I took the test, and I think sometimes it's kind of hard to pinpoint that stuff. Like, what does that mean? What is the value? So if they take a look at that, that's helpful. And there are a couple of other things that I think are important too. One of them, my brilliantly resilient partner and I, we talk about this, is perspective. We have a way of looking at things, and it's always colored by our experiences, by our perception, with how we see the world.
Mm,
If you can just take that tiniest little of steps back and go, is this really what's happening? Like when people feel that, I don't know, just for an example, that there's somebody that's being disrespectful to them in some way, or, somebody said something and they took it a certain way, that may not exactly be what's happening here.
mm,
We have to be willing to recognize that our perceptions color the things that we see.
mm,
And before we make stupid decisions, take a step back, take a breath, and just go, is this the way this really is, or is this just how I'm seeing it? And maybe there's another way to look at this.
mm. Wow, and that kind of goes into my next question. That was a brilliant way to kind of move forward to that. Do you feel that that's the biggest thing that you've struggled with today, from all that you've seen so far on your journey, or what comes to mind? Do you think just being
Well,
able to step back and find perspective in things, or is there anything else that
it's
pops
really
to mind?
funny that, yeah, first of all, perspective is always, it's a challenge for everybody, no matter what or who you are, because we have certain things in our brains that are part of our persona. They're part of our personality. We don't even think about them. They just kick in because that's who we are.
Mm,
But what we fail to recognize is the people that we're interacting with, that's who they are. And they're reacting and behaving based on their perceptions and their ideas of what the world's about. So it's not that either of us is more valid than the other. It's just that we're different. And we have to at least be willing to respect that somebody else might see it differently from us. Now,
mm,
clearly, if there's harm done, that's a whole different story. But if it's just a matter of somebody's perspective doesn't jive with yours, maybe it's okay to just step back and let that be. And, you go your way, the other person goes their way, and everybody just kind of exists agreeing to disagree. But for me, it's, I talk about this stuff all the time. I am not immune to those moments of going, oh my God, everything's terrible. I'm never going to get ahead. I'm never going to get, everybody goes 2 steps forward, 1 step back every once in a while. Everybody.
mm,
So I have to continually go back and go, I have my little pity party. I feel sorry for myself. Oh, it didn't get what I wanted. That's a shame. And then I go, you know what? I can't stay here and be miserable. It's just, I can't. I did that for a long time. I was really good at playing the victim.
mm.
And when you continually tell yourself that story, nothing ever goes right for me, guess what? Nothing's ever going to go right for you. Because that's how you're seeing the world. You're seeing the world that everything that happens is somehow working against you. And that's that whole perspective idea. And you had the right idea. Okay, this isn't exactly what I wanted, but maybe there's a kernel of something in here that I can use. And you might be able to find that you go in a different direction that you never thought you were going to go into. I didn't expect to be a motivational speaker, but you know what? That was something that grew out of my son's addiction. That was not, now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say, oh, it was great that my son's an addict. I'm not going to say that. But what I am going to say is that thing happened. What are my choices? To sit there and wring my hands and whine and moan about it for the rest of my life, what all happened there, or to take that experience and make something out of it that elevates it beyond my personal pain and helps somebody else.
That is so deep. Thank you so much for diving into that. And this popped this phrase, and I share this with a lot of my students, that we perform at the level of our beliefs, not the level of our potential. And when we was talking about, if you don't believe it, it's not going to happen. Doubt is like poison to your dreams, your goals, whatever you're trying to achieve in life, and whatever you're trying to overcome. And it's kind of like if you had a water bottle and you dropped, some poison in that water bottle, just a drop of it, that whole water bottle is ruined. And thinking of that water as your belief system, as your dreams, your goals, that's how doubt is. And we have to get to a point where we're for sure about what we want, get clarity, focus, and consistency on what we want to overcome and this drive, and get good people around us to be able to fulfill that. And I'm sure that's something that you did, and your son went on the journey of overcoming that heroin and or that addiction in general. And I know there's somebody that's looking at this right now, either a parent or a teacher that has someone that's going through addiction right now, or maybe there's even a kid that's dealing with some addiction that's looking at us right now, hearing us right now. Is there a tip or technique that, based off of your journey through the whole process with your son, that you will tell that individual who's wanting to reach out and help someone that's dealing with that addiction? And how would you encourage them to move forward with that?
I would say my very first piece of advice would be put the shame in a drawer. Put it in a drawer. You did not make a conscious choice to be an addict. You made certain choices, and addiction is the way your body responded. But this doesn't have to be the end of your journey. The only thing any of us can do, and they talk about this in addiction all the time, the only thing any of us can do is make the next right decision. That's it. We can't make a decision for something that hasn't yet happened. We can't make a decision that's going to undo something in the past. We can't do that. But what you can do is make one right decision and make it your next one. And then make another next right decision. And here's the other thing I would say. Don't be ashamed if you do take that 2 steps forward and 1 or 2 or 3 steps back. As with anything in life, it's a process. You need to put your hand up. You need to ask for help. Ask for help. You cannot do this alone. I'm telling you right now, you can't do it alone. You need help. Put the shame away. Ask for help. You deserve better than to live like this. You deserve better. Anybody out there who's watching this, you deserve better. And the next right decision is the thing that will help you get there. I will tell you this, when my son was in the middle, starting his recovery, I shouldn't even say in the middle, the very beginning parts of his recovery, this was kind of something that we decided, this was going to be the thing. We were just going to do the next right thing. And I said to him at one point, if you keep doing this, like this next right thing, do one real solid thing every day to move you forward, you'll be amazed at where you are in a year's time. And that absolutely came true. But at the beginning of that, one of the things that he did for himself that filled him with so much joy and pride was a simple little thing. He went out and bought his own personal products. He went out and bought like deodorant. He went out and bought, shaving cream and shampoo. This was something really little that he did to take responsibility for himself. Your steps don't have to be huge. They just have to be pointed in the right direction. They can be little. Little doesn't matter. The size doesn't matter. The direction matters. That's it.
And no, those are gold. That is gold. Don't be ashamed. Ask for help and don't be afraid of small steps because, and that don't be ashamed part, that is so difficult, right? Especially, it's crazy. Like we look at everybody as perfect, right? Well, we get on social media, we see people's timelines and, oh, Susie, her life's perfect. John's life's perfect, has a perfect family. Look at his pictures. Everything's all filtered out. And then we look at our shame, be like, man, I can't talk to somebody about this. They're going to think, I'm not perfect. And we kind of stay in this bubble. And for me, even dating back to my alcohol abuse and some of my, baggage that I created, I called it emotional baggage, where, I grew up in a culture where it wasn't, looked upon for males to express their feelings, to be able to talk about their weaknesses. It was just kind of like, if you're going to talk about something, you talk about something while being angry or talk about strength. And it wasn't necessarily that emotional baggage. That's kind of how I share. And it was like, it took me all the way to my adulthood to be able to open up that bag and allow someone else to look into it. And because I kept a tight hold on that emotional baggage, and not talking to anyone, not asking questions, like looking at it in the sense of, if someone understood how Chaz Jackson really felt inside, the lack of self-love, the lack of self-worth, they're going to look at me differently if I let them look inside of this bag. And as I went through, my journey, I discovered open up that bag is a sign of strength, and it allows you to really, get that team around you who's going to influence you to continue to open that bag, and you're going to be able to fly a lot straighter in life, to be honest with you. And you also, for me, I discovered, hey, there's other people out there that's going through what I'm going through too. I'm not alone. My situation is not unique, and that took a lot of load off of me. So yeah, I love those 3 points. Don't be ashamed, ask for help, and taking those small steps, because those small steps turn into even greater things. And that's what we're doing. I like Will Smith. He was like, I'm building a house. He said this analogy, and I'm laying one brick as perfect as I can on a daily basis. That one brick, that's what I'm concentrating on. And once you continue to lay that one brick, you're going to build a house that no one can tear down. So
that's it.
I truly believe what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's that foundation. And I think here's the other thing to keep in mind. Everybody has a train wreck. Everybody has a train wreck. Like the size of it, the whatever, the experiences might be different. There is not one person who doesn't have a closet that they're holding shut with one hand because they don't want somebody to see it. There's not one person. Everybody's got that. So, don't play that game where you compare your life to somebody else's and think that so-and-so's got a perfect life. No, they don't. Nobody has a perfect life. Nobody has a perfect life. There is something wrong with everybody's life. I'm just putting that right out there right now. And, here's one other thing that I kind of want the kids especially to take away with. We talk about dreams and we talk about goals, and sometimes we have dreams and goals that, for whatever reason, we're not going to reach. Like, I'm never going to be an NBA basketball player. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Hoop, man. You got it. You got it.
I have no jump shot. I got nothing. But the point is, when you take steps based on your values and in a positive direction towards that goal, whatever it is, something will happen along that road that will either lead you closer to that goal, or it might lead you on a left turn or a right turn or whatever. The important thing is, do not be so married to an outcome, to a one thing, that you can't see the opportunity that might evolve if you take that left turn or that right turn. Don't be married to the outcome. Certainly keep your dreams in mind. Certainly keep going forward in that direction. But at every stage, if you hit a roadblock, take a look around that roadblock and see if there might be an opportunity to do something else that might be interesting or cool or whatever to you. It doesn't mean you give up on what your dreams are, but always be looking for that opportunity in the evolution of your journey.
Man, don't be married to your outcome. How often do we do that?
Oh my gosh.
Gosh, we get our mindset on this is how it's going to happen, just like this. It's going to be A. There's no need for B or C. And generally, it doesn't work out that way. And my favorite book is the Bible. Me being a man of faith, it says many plans are in a man's heart, but the counsel of the Lord will prevail. So there's so many plans, but I like how you said don't be married to the outcome, because not saying you won't reach that goal, won't reach that destination, but a lot of times it's not going to really happen the way you plan it. It's like, even,
you know what? God's got a plan for us, and they say God writes straight with crooked lines. So you got to be willing to walk that crooked journey a little bit, because if you keep walking the journey and keep following your heart, keep following your value system, keep making that next right decision, you're going to end up where God wants you to be. And believe me, that's better than any place you figured out you might be.
Yeah.
It is better.
Yeah, most definitely. John Maxwell popped in my head too in his book Leadership, and it came to my head because I was thinking about whenever you was talking. I think you said it was your granddaughter that was playing in the sand.
Yeah.
But he had said a quote. He was like, write your goals in concrete, but your plans in the sand. And I thought that was really brilliant.
Like, I love that.
If you think about the sand, like when you're riding at those waves, at times they can come up and knock down whatever you're riding, knocking down your sand castle. But so we have to be willing, just like your granddaughter, able to kind of shift and maneuver. Like, hey, let's refocus this thing, because we can't stop those waves. Those waves are going to come, but those waves are there to help create who you're supposed to be whenever you do reach that concrete goal. So. Yeah.
And they can be fun to ride too. I mean, they can be really.
Are you a surfer, Mary?
They can be. I'll tell you what. My son and my youngest daughter are surfers.
Oh wow!
And my son was insistent on getting me on a surfboard a couple years ago, and I got up on it. I swear, I think it was in like 7 or 8 inches of water, but I got up on that surfboard. So you're just never too old. Just try it. Take a chance.
Yeah, I went boogie boarding. Hopefully, does that count? I haven't got on one.
Hey, I have a very healthy respect for the ocean. Anytime you let those waves take you where they want to take you, I think that's a win.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Mary, you've been dropping jewels, golden nuggets. You gave so much value. I know there's somebody that's listening to us right now, like, hey, I want to get in contact with this lady. I want her to help me overcome some barriers. Can you share how someone can reach out to you if they want to go any further as far as using your services and just connecting with you?
Please, please, please do. Anybody who has any, who wants to talk, any kids out there who, just need a touchstone, somebody that they want to bounce some stuff off of. My website is maryfranbontempo.com. My email is maryfran@maryfranbontempo.com. I also have the Brilliantly Resilient program that I run with my partner. And that website is brilliantlyresilient.net. They're right behind me, brilliantlyresilient.net. And if you can't remember the whole maryfranbontempo.com, you can reach me through that one too. And I'm LinkedIn and Facebook and whatever. Just shoot me a message.
Weird question is the Fran Bontempo, is that like the whole lot? Is that your middle name? Fran?
No, my first name is 2 names. I was named after my grandmothers, Mary and Frances. So I use both of them because I don't want either one of them to haunt me from beyond if I don't use both of their names. So I don't want to tick off any ghosts. So I use both of their names.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Miss Mary, Queen Mary, for blessing GNG Podcast with your time, with your presence. You are a phenomenal individual. I definitely resonate with what you're doing. And thank you so much for just being an advocate for your son all the way up to young people, to adults who are diving into the 15-minute mastery and just becoming brilliantly resilient through your services. And I know there's so much more that you're going to be doing I definitely know you're going to continue to be salt and light to this planet. And I'm just so humbled to be in your presence. And I look forward to connecting with you more. But again, thank you for blessing my audience on episode 20.
Well, I'll tell you, this was just a complete and utter delight, as I knew it would be. And I look forward to more collaborations between you and I. So thank you, Chaz.
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. I'm going to lead us out. I told each and every one of you episode 20 was going to be phenomenal. If you didn't catch this whole thing, go ahead and rewind it back. You don't want to miss a second of it. I want each and every one of you to stay up with GNG. More episodes coming soon. I want each and every one of you to keep those crowns on your hearts. And please remember this. We are God's echo. Love each and every one of you.
Thank you for listening to GNG Podcast. Remember, you are gifted differently to make a difference. Please visit ChazJacksonSpeaks.org and let's continue to grow together. God bless.